So now that we've examined quite a few things that are pertinent to cascading style sheets, let's go back and talk a little bit about, just to review what exactly are cascading style sheets. Let's explore how do they actually cascade. Basically, we know a style sheet is simply a text file with the file name and extension of .css, or it can be some rules that are embedded within the actual document, and we've explored the three different types of styles that we can create: inline, embedded, and then external style sheets. A style sheet is basically just a list of CSS rules, and each rule defines a particular style that's applied to your XHTML markup. A rule can define the font size of the text of the paragraphs, the thickness of a border around a particular image, the positioning of a headline, the color of the background, and all sorts of different things. Many types of sophisticated typography and layout features that you're familiar with using in print design can now be emulated in web pages using CSS. The cascade in cascading style sheets involves falling down from one level of the hierarchy of your document to the next, and its function is to let the browser decide which of the many possible sources of a particular property for a particular tag is the one to actually use. The name Cascade comes from the cascade of a waterfall, so you can kind of think that as the rules are applied, whatever is closest to the tag is the one that usually wins out. Basically, the cascade is going to define which style sheet is looked at in which order and which style wins out if a style is defined in two or more places. So we'll look at this in a moment in a file. Here's the code for this file right here, which is basically kind of like a summary of what I've just told you. The order in which the browser is going to look at or cascade through the various locations is: first it looks at the default browser sheet for any particular browser. So all browsers have a default browser sheet. They are what make the links blue, and the visited link color purple, and the active link color red. The text is usually black. So that's the first thing it's going to look at. If there's a user style sheet that the actual user of the web has defined, because you can go in and you can customize the way your browser renders a web page, that's going to then trump the default browser style sheet. The next one that's going to take over is the author style sheet. So that would be you as the web developer. And this basically is going to be your external style sheet, your .css file that your web page is linked to. So that's going to trump any user style sheets and any default browser style sheets. Finally, any author embedded styles are going to trump this. So if you have embedded styles in your web page, they will take over these things. And then finally, author inline styles are going to trump all of these things. And the way I like to think about it is, the author inline styles are going to be closest to the tag, so they are the things that will take over. The embedded styles are closer to the tag than the external style sheet, so they take over. Here's kind of in summary things that you can remember about the cascade. Rule number 1 is selectors with IDs win out over selectors with classes, and we talked about how IDs are more powerful than classes. These in turn are going to win out over selectors with only tags. So they will trump selectors that are only based on tags. They are more powerful. They're like the queen in chess. Rule number 2 is that if the same property for the same tag is defined in more than one location in the cascade, inline styles win over embedded styles, which win over style sheets. Rule number 2, the one I just said, loses to rule number 1 though, if the selector is more specific. Whichever one is more specific is going to win out. And finally, rule number 3 is defined styles win out over inherited styles, regardless of specificity. And let's look at an example of these actually working. This is going to be our working file, so you can review these a little bit more. I'm going to go back to our code view right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to create, first of all, an external style sheet that's just going to style some of the elements in this page. So I'm going to be creating my external style sheet I'll just actually create it in, I have text edit, which I'm going to be using to create the external style sheet. I've already given this a name of cascade.css, and I'm just going to quickly type up a couple rules. So I'm going to make a rule for my h3 tag, and let me just go ahead and make my font size a little bit bigger for you, so it'll be easier to see. So I'm going to specify h3, and let's go ahead and give it a color. And I'm going to go ahead and use a color of white. So I'm just going to type FFF semicolon. Then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set the background color, because white text definitely is not going to show up very well against my default white background. So we'll make the background color that same kind of blue that we were using in the last exercise. And finally, I'm going to go ahead and set my font family. And I'm just going to go ahead and set my font family to Arial, which I suppose I should spell correctly. And then if the browser doesn't, or the person's system doesn't have Arial, it'll default to the default sans serif. I'm going to go ahead and also define some styles for both my P and my unordered list. So let me put a comma in here, so it's going to go ahead and define both of these things. And the styles that I want to define are going to be a font size of 12 pixels, and we'll go ahead and set the font family here too. So font family, and let's just use Verdana or a sans serif if Verdana is not available. So that's going to be it for my external style sheet. I'm going to save my file. So now I've saved this file called cascade.css. And now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and I want to make a link to my style sheet back here. So let's go ahead and let's do that next. I'm going to go back into editing the code of my web page. I already have the tags that are waiting for me to go ahead and put embedded styles, which we'll do shortly. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set a link to this external style sheet. So I'm going to go ahead and type link, then I'm going to type the href so I can go ahead and make the link to this. My styles are located in a folder called styles. That's where I usually keep my styles. And it's just one directory down from this page. I'm going to go ahead and type cascade.css, which is the name of the style. And then I need to go ahead and specify the rest of the tag, which is the relationship. It is a style sheet. And I also need to go ahead and specify the type. And it is just a text CSS file. So we'll go ahead and put that in there just like this. I'm going to save my page, and if we refresh the page in the browser, you can see that now my header has been defined as white with a blue background, and my paragraph and unordered list have been defined according to the style sheet that I just set, which was 12 pixels, and I also set the font. So you can see that my external style sheets are working. We can actually see them working right here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to add some embedded styles. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, just so we can explore the cascade, I'm going to make an embedded style for my UL, my unordered list. And I'm going to go ahead and set the font weight. And we'll go ahead and make the, actually let's just do font family, since we actually already specified that in our last style sheet. So I'm going to do font family. And I'm going to specify that the font family be set to Courier, which is kind of more of a, standard typewriter type font. And I'm going to save this, and if we go ahead and refresh this in the browser, you can see that now my unordered list has now changed to the Courier font. So even though we defined in our style sheet, if we revisit our style sheet, here we have it right here. We defined the unordered list to use a font family of Verdana, Now that I put an embedded style right here within the page of Courier, it's going to go ahead and trump that external style sheet. This is closer to the tag than my external style sheet. So now let's go ahead and let's come down here into the code, and I'll just put a couple returns in here to separate out my unordered list. Here's my unordered list. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make an inline style on the unordered list. So I'm going to type style, and we'll go ahead and we'll use font family again. And I'm going to set the font family to be Georgia. So it'll default to a serif font. And let's also, just for the fun of it, go ahead and specify a font size. So I'm going to go ahead and specify font size. And let's go ahead and make the font size set to 16 pixels. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set the color, and I have one problem which I'll come back and fix in a second, to like a gray. Now I need to get rid of these quotes right here. For some reason, when you're typing the Dreamweaver's little inline styles, it goes ahead and it adds those quotes which we don't want and don't need. And you can see how my text kind of turned to be a strange color right there. It wasn't recognizing the property value pairs that I typed in, but now this looks good. So that should be all set. I need to end the quotes over here right after my semicolon, because this is how we write our inline styles. I'll save the page, and now when I refresh in the browser, you can see that now my unordered list has changed fonts again. Now it's displaying as Georgia. It has changed the font color, and it's actually changed the font size too. Because I'm changing all these different fonts, the font sizes actually look a little bit different. But it is because this inline style is closer to this unordered list, it has now changed those attributes as well. So you can really see the kind of the cascade happening right here as we define these different things. We've defined the unordered list in 3 different places. First in our external style sheet, which it did update when we were only using the external style sheet. Second, in the embedded style, and that also did recognize that when we were just using the external style sheet and the embedded style. And thirdly, when I defined my inline style and actually put this style right here on the tag, it trumped the other 2 completely. So this is kind of like a quick review of the cascade. Obviously, it can get a little more complex, but if you understand this principle, you're going to understand and be able to control your cascading style sheets much better. So hopefully this quick little example has helped you out a little bit here.